Hey everyone, Salthany Teen Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it is time for a review of the new ANOHNI album, Hopelessness. ANOHNI is the name of singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist, formerly known as Antoni Hegarty of Antoni and the Johnsons fame, also Hercules and Love Affair, and this is her first purely solo record under this brand new name. And even though I liked the singles teasing up to the release of this record, I did have my reservations because in the past I've never really been an Antoni and the Johnsons fan, but when it came time to dive into this record, I was pleasantly surprised by the material that was presented. It was not the whimsically obtuse experience that I had expected. This album, in fact, is actually synthetic. It's really direct, takes a ton of notes from synth pop, glitch pop, a little bit of art pop too, and also features production from the likes of Hudson Mohawk and 106 Point Never, so you know the instrumentals on this record are going to be super digital, colorful, vivid, punchy, and maybe a little abstract. The instrumentation might not always flow with ANOHNI's vocals in the way that it might have on those Antoni and the Johnsons records, where of course you had all that chamber instrumentation which followed very closely to the vocal performances. But generally I like the production, I like the beats, I like the instrumentals on this album. They are very textured and they suffice. Now also becoming more straightforward on this record are the lyrics, which are boldly political. She leaves very little to the imagination on this record in terms of her intention. She really kind of hits listeners over the head with what she's trying to say, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if the songs are enjoyable. Take, for example, the song Watch Me, which is a track about government surveillance, whose narrative I think is actually kind of hilarious the way that she poses it. We're talking about a protagonist here who is aware that she is being surveilled, aware that she is being watched by the government, but she sort of talks about the government as if it's her father. She calls it daddy. She refers to it in a loving way and says that it must love her because it's watching her all the time. We also have the song 4 Degrees, which is a track about the environment and global warming. Drone Bomb Me, a song where essentially the protagonist of the track wishes to die because their whole world has been torn apart by war, and specifically drone bombs. Drone bombs, as well as mass graves and torture, are themes that come up on the song Crisis 2, where essentially the listener is forced to, along with ANOHNI, take on a bit of responsibility as an American for the horrible things that our government does every day to protect us. And there is the song Execution, which is literally about execution, capital punishment, and direct comparisons are drawn between America and other countries that are seen as terrible in terms of their human rights violations, but also make use of capital punishment. The Saudis, the Koreans, the Chinese. The politics on this thing are super heavy-handed. Some people are going to be turned off by it right away. However, I personally see it as kind of refreshing to hear some serious urgency being delivered by a singer on some seriously life or death topics here. Because we live in an age where a lot of our political discussions boil down to whining over first world problems on social media or like underneath BuzzFeed articles. And the media isn't really doing any better facilitating smart political discussions because flip on any news channel and it's essentially like Hillary versus Trump 24/7. We're getting close to almost 20 years of war in the Middle East, and with each year, it seems like there's more and more just growing apathy to it. And this is something that I think the title track of this album, in a way, addresses and kind of delivers a bit of a bleak outlook on the future, as the song portrays every human being almost like a virus that is continuing through this cycle of taking away more from the earth than they are giving back. I love the explosive, emotional, lyrical, and musical finish of the track too. It almost makes me wish that this was the final song of the entire album. I get that she might have also wanted to make this point that she did on the song Marrow about the earth kind of being sucked dry, but to me, Hopelessness was the ideal finish. Because Marrow, to me, is just kind of one of several moments on here where the message kind of trumps the music. There's not much of a song, there's not much of a melodic or really even an interesting sonic element to some of these tracks, as ANOHNI's lyrics sort of take center stage. Now, her vocal performances, for the most part on this record, are captivating or are at least attention-grabbing, even if they're not always enjoyable, because as I expected, though not as much here as on those Antony and the Johnsons records, but the vocals are still kind of an acquired taste. This very deep, expressive vibrato that just shakes so hard on some of these tracks, occasionally in a really weird way, slightly reminds me of Michael McDonald of the Doobie Brothers, but not in a bad way. Just kind of one of those things that once I thought it, I couldn't unhear it during some parts. And while I don't mind a strange vocal, in fact, I'd rather vocalists try to be more eccentric than just bland and commercial and generic, there are moments on here where I do think the singing goes a little overboard and it becomes more obnoxious than it is eclectic, like on the track Watch Me, where we're getting kind of all of these vocal embellishments hanging behind the instrumentation after the verses doing Watch Me. And then on the song Obama, Obama, a track where I definitely understand the point of the song. I mean, Obama in a lot of respects has been a pretty great disappointment in terms of the peace and the other various systemic issues in the first world that a lot of people who elected him thought that he would fix right away or just be the solution to, when in fact he wasn't, and just kind of continued a lot of these awful policies that we hated so much about the Bush administration. But this decent point is kind of swallowed in the very obtuse music and vocal delivery. Then we have the song Violent Men, which is another okay point, although this track just kind of feels more like a mantra and not so much like a coherent and interesting song. And also, this track is kind of a funny point to make, considering that we're on the verge of electing what could possibly be our first female president, who will probably be just as hawkish as Obama, maybe even more hawkish than the xenophobic dope that she's running against. And even though there are points on this album that I like and that I can get behind, some of the, I guess you can call them arguments on this record, though I don't want to completely use that word here because, you know, these are songs, these are pieces of art, these are expressions. They're not 5,000 word dissertations on the political issues being addressed in these tracks, but still, I do feel like the song Execution, though I do like its sparkling synths and the galloping beat, could use a little more nuance, because I think directly comparing America's use of capital punishment to like Saudi Arabia, where you could be punished in a variety of different ways, including execution, just for like same-sex relations, it seems like a little bit of a jump. Little bit of a jump. I mean, if you're going to bring up America and Saudi Arabia in the same track, why not bring up the fact that we hypocritically criticize other countries for their human rights violations, but very rarely Saudi Arabia, and we continue to do tons and tons of business, both financial and political, with them. And also, I mean, it's not that there aren't good arguments against capital punishment that I agree with. There most certainly are. It's just that this song isn't really one of them. Now, there are other cuts in the track listing here that are not only great points, or I think put together some great lyrics on a pertinent topic, but are also musically chilling and beautiful. Drone Bomb Me, prime example. A track whose vocal performance I think is one of the most amazing on the entire record and really kind of puts me into the emotions of the character that ANOHNI is trying to play on this song, who again wishes for her own death because her life has just essentially been torn apart by this war that she's living in the middle of. And the song 4 Degrees too. The choruses on this track are just super passionate. They're huge, they're epic, they're grandiose. And the explosive song is kind of met with this mantra where she's singing over and over, it's only 4 degrees, it's only 4 degrees, essentially kind of sweeping the urgency of the whole climate change thing under the rug, while simultaneously singing about things like animal carcasses being dead in fields and fish being belly up in the sea, and kind of while sweeping climate change under the rug, wishing for these things to happen, demanding in a way for these things to happen. Then there's some heart-wrenching ballads on this thing too, like I Don't Love You Anymore, which seems kind of like a departure from the political angle a lot of these songs take, but given that almost every song surrounding this track is so socially conscious, you have to assume that maybe there's a little subtext here going on. But even if there isn't, it's a beautiful tune. Very dreary, very sad. And then there's the kind of wonderful and inspirational, but also very dismal, Why Did You Separate Me From the Earth? Which I think also kind of takes a bit of an environmental angle. Putting into song, I think, the destruction of either the environment or just living organisms that didn't need to die. There are a lot of songs on this record that I liked. It's just that the album overall isn't really that consistent. As some of the songs here, I think, are just structured in a really awkward way, or don't have that much to them because it seems like the message kind of takes priority. And sometimes that message isn't exactly stunning or well developed. And again, I understand it's kind of hard to make a really coherent and sharp argument in song, simply because, you know, again, it's not like an article or a think piece or some kind of study or philosophical paper, which is kind of a risk that you run when writing politically charged music. But having said that, there are plenty of moments on this album, I would say the majority, not the vast majority, but the majority nonetheless, of the tracks on here where a quality message is married to a good tune, some great production, and a decent vocal performance. I ended up liking this thing more than I expected I would, and whatever ANOHNI drops in the future, I'm definitely going to be less hesitant to jump into it, but I can't really say I thought the album was anything more than just kind of decent. I'm feeling a decent strong 6 on this record. Tran?
Zishin, have you given these puppers a listen? Did you love them? Did you hate them? What would you rate them? You're the best. You're the best. Which pup should I pet next? This one. Ooh. 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 Wherever.